You're in the trenches once again with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, and we want to thank you for joining us in the trenches from our outstanding studios, as good as anybody has, and we appreciate First Star Logistics for that. We're joined today by Bengals quarterback coach Dan Pitcher. He talks about Joe Burrow, obviously. He talks about the Baltimore Ravens game. He talks about the upcoming opponent, which is going to be a big test for the Cincinnati Bengals. There's no doubt about that. The New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. It is loud down there. There's a lot of distractions potentially for young guys too. Stay off Bourbon Street. Don't need to be doing any of that. I know the Cincinnati Bengals will be focused. They're going to try to bring that record to an even Steven 3-3. Coach Dan Pitcher will tell us how they're going to get that done. Welcome once again to In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, coming from our First Star Logistics studios, which are as good as it gets. And we want to welcome to our podcast videocast the one, the only quarterback coach for the Cincinnati Bengals, Dan Pitcher. Coach, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Lap.
I know it's a busy day. This is the day where the sausage is made. I mean, this is where you're really game planning. You're getting after it a little bit. I guess, first of all, let's go backwards just for a little bit. The Baltimore Raven game, thought the running game showed signs of blossoming. Am I accurate there?
Yeah, I think you are. I think both Joe and Samaje really had some tough runs there, starting in the second quarter, leading into the second half. We really made some hay on the ground. I thought the guys up front did a good job, and that's an ongoing process. And the line's gelling, and our backs are running well, and we need to build on that performance.
You think in this era, this day and age of the National Football League, that the month of September is pretty much almost like an extended preseason?
No. I wouldn't say that, because they all count,
Yeah.
In the sense that it takes time for units to gel and for you to find out, what this version of this year's team does well.
Right.
I think there's definitely some truth to that. But you got to figure it out in a hurry, and you got to do it, with live ammunition coming at you. So it's a process you got to figure out fast. But I think every team to some extent is doing that in the first month of the season.
How big a factor is not having a guy like T. Higgins with his ability? I mean, in my mind, he's a number one guy. He's the number one receiver. The dude is big, man. He's got a huge catch radius. He's a hell of a football player. You don't have him for a good portion of the Pittsburgh game, and you don't have him for very much at all against the Ravens. How big of a blow is that? How hard is that to make those adjustments that quickly?
Yeah, well, we love T, and T is a huge part of our offense. And so, we want to have him out there every single play if we can. But, we know this is football, and sometimes things happen, and, guys that you would like to have out there, you don't have available to you. So, we're looking forward to having T out there as early and as quickly as possible. But in the meantime, other guys step up. Mike Thomas, made a big catch and run the other night.
Yep.
And, we got a good receiver group that we have confidence in, and that those, that Troy and Brad do a great job of making sure those guys are ready for when their number's called. And so we'll keep plugging right along.
So the Baltimore Ravens, I'm so used to the Wink Martindale, look of, man, they're bringing one more than you can block. They're coming all the time. It kind of morphed away from that a little bit, and it had, but it seemed like against the Bengals, it even morphed further away from that. I think they brought five players, not that often, and they played a lot of coverage, and everybody's playing cover two, which is the two safeties deep. Talk to us about, give us a little education on cover two and the problems that cover two can pose.
Yeah, it's not just cover two. There's different versions of two high safety zone coverage that teams can play. There's a whole host of them. And essentially it's just the defense choosing to, apply whatever resources they have to keep defenders deeper and to, try to limit your ability to get behind them. And whether that's through traditional cover two with two half field safeties and 5 underneath players, or whether that's quarters with kind of 4 deeper players and 3 underneath players. And then the techniques of the corners can vary based on if they're reading the inside receivers or not. Sometimes it's half cover two, half quarters. So there's all different variations that teams can play. Sometimes it's dependent on specific people, where they happen to be in your formation, as to what side they're going to play which type of two safety coverage. So, those are all the things that we have to try to diagnose pretty quickly once we get into a game. It's clear that, teams are employing that strategy against us, and, that it makes sense given, our skill position players like T and like Jamar and like Tyler. We figure out the best way to attack those structures, and we look to execute as best we can.
I thought that the way you attacked it in Baltimore, you tried to run them out of it, which is, in my mind, a good thing. Start hammering and maybe bust some where they're going to have to sink one of those guys instead of keeping them back. Screens, I thought, were a good tactic against that the schematic you were seeing, and being real patient with, take the check downs, and it's almost like an extension of your running game. The short intermediate stuff becomes, so huge, and the discipline that it takes to stay after that and stay with it. And you guys went on 13-play, 15-play drives. I thought that, that the way you attacked it was very sound.
Yeah. It's when the defense chooses to play that way, there's certain things certain ways you have to go about playing offense. And, in those drives that you referenced, I thought we did a good job of that. And so, we're always going to stay on the attack. We're always going to be aggressive. We're always looking for opportunities for explosive plays, but we're going to do so intelligently. And we trust Joe to be a great decision maker and to throw the ball where he needs to.
I've in the second half of the football game, the Bengals had 3 possessions, 2 in the third quarter, 1 in the fourth quarter. The Ravens had 4. I tell you that I don't recall very many games where, there were 3 and 4 possessions in an entire half for football teams. They had a 15-play drive. You had a 15 and a 13-play drive. It was like, boy, once the offenses had the football, they were running snaps and grinding clock. It was huge. You get in a situation like that, you're thinking, man, how many more possessions are we going to have? Fortunately, it wasn't a game where we're in the second half down a score or 2, because that would have been doubly tough. But those kind of games, are they rare?
Yeah, I think to that extent they are. Sometimes, again, depending on the style of defense that you're playing and how aggressive they're being, it can lend itself to longer drives, and some games it lends itself to shorter drives and more explosive plays. It's just, that's football, and you got to figure out how to win the game that you're playing in that moment. And, sometimes that means you have 13 possessions, and sometimes, like you said, you got 7. And, so you just have to adapt and be ready to do whatever it's going to take.
So in this football game, obviously the running game was a factor in terms of trying to get the play action pass and all that sort of thing unlocked. Did you notice with the running game improvement, there were more opportunities with that sort of thing, the play action game?
There's always going to be more opportunities for you to move the football down the field when you're executing in both phases. And so it's critical to our success is to be able to run the ball and throw the ball and do the things that complement, each phase in terms of the play action pass and the keepers and things of that nature. So yeah, it's critical that we have success in both those phases.
People that I've talked to, former players, fans, former coaches, everybody was very impressed with Hayden Hurst and the effort that Hayden Hurst gave, particularly on the touchdown reception, but how hard he runs, how physical a player he is. I mean, this dude is a physical, fast twitch guy, isn't he?
Yeah, Hayden's doing a really nice job, and we're really excited that we have him. I know the tight ends as a whole are really coming together as a group, and James is doing a great job with them. And Hayden's playing with a lot of energy, and he's playing like a guy that you can feed off of as a unit. So, hats off to him. And I know he's only just starting, and we'll look to lean on him for the rest of the year.
I know red zone, low red zone in particular, and that's an area where there's focus for improvement, I'm sure. What do you think? Is it just all right? Well, get 9 guys doing things the way we want it done, a couple aren't, or 10 guys and one's not. That's all it takes, isn't it? In those type of situations.
Yeah, I mean, all 11 have to execute, and as you get down there, the field shrinks and the defense has to cover less and less ground, and it gets more and more difficult to find space. And so you get down there, we just we got to do a better job executing all the way around, regardless of what the particular call is in a given moment. And we spend a lot of time coming up with a great plan to get the ball in down there. So we'll keep working at it, and we'll get better.
So I guess did the Ravens do anything that you had not anticipated they might do defensively, either out in the field or in the low red zone or whatever? Did they change anything up? It seems like teams doing things differently against this Bengals offense and the weapons you guys have than they may have shown, prior in game tape that you may have studied. I mean, were there subtle changes? Were there drastic changes? What was that like?
Yeah, you kind of referenced it at the beginning of the interview. Traditionally they've been a little bit more of a single high, exotic pressure. They have a new coordinator and they have new players, and so teams are allowed to mold and do whatever they want on any given Sunday. And that's what we just have to be ready for, and so, yeah, sometimes maybe defenses are playing us a little bit differently than what they've shown on tape, but it's part of the NFL. It's part of recognizing what challenges you pose to an opponent and how they might, choose to play you given those challenges. And so, we do our best to try to anticipate those things and then be able to react in the moment if we do see something that, maybe wasn't at the top of our radar.
So let's put the Baltimore Ravens to bed, and let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. Two road games in very hostile environments back to back. I mean, Baltimore's as loud an outdoor stadium as I've ever been in when they get full throat, and those fans are so supportive. Down there in New Orleans, those fans are psycho for football, and they're in a dome. I mean, man, you guys back to back weeks are going to be dealing with some significant crowd noise, but I thought you handled that aspect of it against Baltimore exceptionally well. What did you think?
Yeah, we got guys with a lot of experience, guys that are professionals that just understand that that's, again, part of playing in the NFL. It's you just deal with it. It's not you don't make too much of a big deal. There's going to be a loud crowd who's excited to cheer on their home team, and it's our responsibility to go into that environment and be able to communicate and execute the way we need to win the game. So we don't make too much of a big deal about it. We got guys that know how to handle themselves in those spots, and that's what we'll do.
So this defensive football team for the New Orleans Saints, take me through. I know Cam Jordan's a heck of a football player. This is a pretty salty group. What do you think of the New Orleans Saints when you throw tape on, and what are your impressions when you've concluded your study?
Yeah, I mean, they're good. They've got you just mentioned Cam Jordan, who's been doing it now for 12 years at a super high level. He's kind of in the mold of that big, powerful, explosive guy that can cause issues at the defensive end position. He can be an issue inside. He can do a variety of things, and they've got other, long, strong, powerful defensive linemen. They've got, linebackers who are aggressive, who will fill downhill and who will hit you. And then they got, good defensive backs as well. Marshawn Lattimore is one of the top corners in the league. They've got some other, corners that are playing at a high level, and safeties as well. So it's a good group. It's a scheme that's, been together for several years, obviously with their head coach having been the defensive coordinator in years prior. And So, they obviously thought a lot of him and his scheme and the way he coached those guys, for him to take over as the head coach. And so, we know we got a challenge ahead of us, and we're excited to go meet it.
I was talking to Archie Manning a little bit earlier today, and it seems like, according to what he's talking about, that it's going to be the return of the heroes, the LSU guys, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, to the city of New Orleans, where they at LSU they brought a national championship to that region of the country. I mean, the LSU players are all held in high regard, and there's a few of them on the Bengals roster. How do you handle that part of it? I mean, I'm sure Joe Burrow, I know you don't have to worry about him with his laser focus, I'd assume, but I mean, obviously, they're going to have to deal with it in some way, shape, or form, and it's handling it the right way is a big deal, isn't it, as you get ready for a game like this?
Yeah, I think you're dealing again with adults who are pros who are used to a lot of fanfare no matter where they go.
Right.
And so while it's a nice story for people to write about and talk about, and those guys absolutely accomplished some great things down there in Louisiana. And so I'm sure there are a lot of people from that area of the country who, will always remember their time at LSU very fondly, as they should. So, all the accolades they've garnered through that are well-deserved. I know this week's about the Cincinnati Bengals beating the New Orleans Saints and doing whatever it takes to get that done.
No question about that. So as I know you're in the making the sausage aspect of game planning. You're getting that part of it done. This is a big day for putting that game plan together and presentation of said game plan to the players tomorrow. As you're looking at what you're putting together and the structure of it, what do you see as big keys to success in a game like this one?
I mean, it's the same you go in every week. That Lap. I mean, especially when you're going on the road. We just talked about it. It's about communicating, being on the same page, being able to execute, being able to build on some of the momentum in the run game that you referenced from last week, make smart decisions with the football, be aggressive when opportunities present themselves, and we just move the ball down the field and score points. I mean, it sounds generic and it sounds basic, but that's what wins football games. And so, we're coming up with a plan to put us in the best position to do that and let our guys go play.
It's interesting. In 5 games is not the biggest sample size, but it's a little bit of a sample size. And when you guys have gotten the football and scored on that first drive and taken that early lead, had the quick start, you're 2-0. When it hasn't turned out that way, you're 0-3. And I know it's not that simple, but how important is getting off to a good start, particularly on the road?
Well, it's something we focus on. It's something we talk about all the time, is coming out and putting our best foot forward right from the first snap. And it certainly puts us in a better position on offense when we do that, and it puts our defense in a better position too. So that's always going to be an emphasis. It's always going to be important, and it's not going to happen every single week, but we got to work, as hard as possible to make it happen as often as possible. And so we were able to do that in the Jets and the Miami game. Unfortunately, last week, we got the first down there, and then we stalled out a little bit, and so. That's something that whether we start with the ball or not, it doesn't matter. Whenever we touch the ball first on offense, we got to hit the ground running. And so, we work really hard during the week to put us in a good spot to do that.
So, Joe Burrow as well, or better than anybody. At this stage, 5 games into the season, he's well past. I mean, the appendectomy and not having those reps and all that sort of thing. Is Joe Burrow where you and Joe want Joe Burrow to be, or is it still a little bit of a work in progress, or where is Joe mentally, physically, emotionally, all those kind of things?
Well, I think Joe would tell you, and I'll tell you, there's never, we're never looking to be stagnant. We are where we are right now. And there's things that we're always going to focus on to get better and improve our play. I love Joe's approach. I love everything about him. I trust him wholeheartedly. And, we just do every single week's a new week. We put in the best plan we can to let Joe go win us a football game. And that's what we're going to do this week. So, I'm very happy with where Joe's at, and, I expect him to play well.
So I know I've probably asked you this before, but if you had to pick out of all the attributes that he's got, and he checks a ton of boxes, man. He's unique in that regard. What do you think is his biggest attribute, his biggest positive in Joe Burrow as a quarterback, as a football player?
Yeah, like you said, we've done this a lot, but I understand it. It's a fair question, and it's a hard question to answer because I love Joe and I wouldn't trade him for anybody.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great things about him. If you pin me down and made me say one, he's a rare competitor, and without that gene, whatever that is, all the other stuff's only going to take you so far. But he has that rare competitiveness that all great quarterbacks in the NFL have. And he has as much or more of it than anyone. And so if you're pinning me down and making me pick one, that's it.
I'm with you. Competitiveness and clutch gene. Man, dude is he's like at the top of Mount Everest in those areas, as well as a bunch of others. Can't thank you enough. I know you're busy. I know this is a unbelievably busy day, and for you to carve the time for us to visit and catch us up on a few things, it's greatly appreciated. Thanks very much, sir.
You got it, Lap. Have a good one.
You do the same. Thanks.
At First Star Logistics, we're a very strict company that really puts the pressure on our employees. Brakes? What are those?
That's what I'm talking about, Icky. Get the body right, then the mind's right.
Gotta get that body right.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Become a star with a chance to earn the highest commission percentages in the industry as a freight broker agent. Check out firststarlogistics.com.